When the layoff list came out, I saw my name glaring at me from the very last line. I couldn't believe it. Furious, I tore the paper on the spot and stormed straight into Nikki's office. What the hell is this? Either you or Wendy must resign. Please be a little considerate. I consider her. But who considers me? If you couldn't do it, why did you make me promises? I knew you'd react this way. I've already asked someone to arrange a new job for you at another company with better pay. He reached for my hand to comfort me, but I shook it off fiercely. No need, just stay with your childhood sweetheart. We're breaking up. He didn't know that all this time, I'd been torn between staying and studying abroad. Now I can finally focus on preparing to go overseas with peace of mind. Tiffany, stop making a scene. Didn't you always complain this job was too exhausting? I've already arranged a new position for you, better pay, easier work. What more do you want? He smiled bitterly. Thinking I was just throwing a tantrum with him, believing that a few casual words of comfort would make me compromise. To this day, he still presumes to know better, completely unaware that my anger isn't just about work, but about being deceived. He didn't even consider deceiving me as something worth a second thought. I said, we're breaking up. Your family is all abroad. Where will you go if we break up? I leaned back, my expression relaxed. You were dead set against going abroad with your parents back then, saying you couldn't adapt. Now you're stuck in this country with nowhere to go without me. He raised his brows slightly, delivering those words with utter nonchalance, certain I wouldn't leave him, couldn't leave him. For a fleeting moment, my vision blurred. Back then, why exactly was I so unwilling to go abroad? Do I really need to spell it out for him word by word? At that moment, I looked at him, feeling utterly speechless as if I'd swallowed a fly. Mr. Nikki, Wendy accidentally scalded her arm and is crying so pitifully. The moment the door opened and they saw me present, the person fell silent. Nikki brushed past me, walking out with hurried steps. I stood on the second-floor corridor, watching Wendy curled up on the sofa in the first-floor reception area, her eyes already red from crying. Nikki, it hurts so much. Am I going to die? Tiffany got laid off. I wanted to make her a cup of coffee to comfort her, but I'm so clumsy. I can't even do this right. Woo-woo, she clearly saw me, yet still buried her head deeper into Nikki's embrace. Nikki was about to carry her to the hospital when she started putting on a show of refusing again, holding his arm. She feigned resistance while secretly welcoming his touch. Nikki, Tiffany, her gaze drifted toward me, and along with it, a crowd of onlookers became aware of my presence. Wearing expressions of eager anticipation, they waited for Nikki to make a decision. Nikki locked eyes with me and frowned. We stood in a stalemate for several seconds. In the end, he chose to carry Wendy out of the company. I saw Wendy bury her face in the crook of his neck, the upward curve of her lips hidden in the folds of his collar. Everyone wore an expression of tacit understanding. I suddenly felt utterly bored, returned to my workstation, packed up my things, and went home. After Nikki and I got together, we still lived in our own separate places. Sometimes he would come stay with me for a while, or I would go to his place. We were accustomed to this way of being together, leaning on each other, yet leaving ample independent space between us. After getting home, I found a discarded cardboard box and threw all of Nikki's belongings into it. The living room, bedroom, bathroom, nothing was left untouched. The last drawer was pulled open, revealing a red box covered in dust. I picked it up and opened it. Inside lay 2 bracelets, their surfaces still clearly marked by long-term wear. These were the unity beads Nikki and I had prayed for at the temple during high school, later customized with ornaments by a specialized jewelry company. The 2 sandalwood beads at each end are extremely precious. They symbolize shared hearts, never to part until white-haired old age. They were worn for many, many years. Until one day his strand was tossed beside the bedside and never touched again. So I too took off my strand and placed both together in a box. Years have passed, and even I had forgotten their existence. I reached out and touched them, once warm on mine and Nikki's wrists, now piercingly cold, just like Nikki and me today. I closed the lid and threw the entire box, bracelet and all, straight into the trash. Sad, he doesn't deserve it. After packing up, I took a photo and sent it to Nikki. Come get your stuff yourself. The other side immediately showed typing, but no message came through for a long time. I went to make a cup of coffee. Just as I reached the living room, my phone rang. Nikki was video calling. I pressed the answer button. Tiffany, alright, I'm sorry, this time it's my fault. Okay, we've been together for so many years. Is such a small thing really worth breaking up over? Before I could speak, another coquettish voice came from the other side. Wendy. It hurts so much. Nurse, could you be a little gentler? Nikki, could you come help me apply the medicine? It really hurts. The scene shifts. Wendy sits on the hospital bed, crying her heart out. The young nurse, wearing a mask, looks at her with impatience in her eyes. I could read the unspoken words in her mind. Fake. With such minor injuries, they'd heal on their own if you waited a bit longer to apply the medicine. What's all the screaming about? The little nurse came over and stuffed the medicine into Nikki's arms, then walked straight out. All right then, I'll take you to that restaurant you like in a few days. Gotta go now. I didn't say a word the whole time, just watched the whole show unfold. No sooner had I ended the video call than my parents' call came through. Sweetheart, have you made up your mind? He's never taken international graduate students before, this is the first time. Your father and I had someone submit your resume. And he was very pleased. Come keep me company for 3 years, won't you? You're always staying in China. My parents took turns persuading me. I carefully reviewed the materials my parents had sent. That professor was my academic idol whom I greatly admired during my university years. A godlike figure in the business field I studied. Now, such a golden opportunity lies before me. Not being tempted is impossible. It's just that I was still hesitating about my relationship with Nikki. 3 years apart might change everything beyond recognition. Little did I know, it's already riddled with holes now. I can no longer deceive myself. But if I really want to take that professor's graduate program, I don't have full confidence either. After 3 years since graduation, many things have faded from memory. If only I hadn't declined the offer to pursue graduate studies at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania back then. Perhaps now I could directly apply for his Ph.D. program. It's just that the year I graduated, Nikki's grandfather passed away. Nikki was raised by his grandparents since childhood and shared an exceptionally deep bond with them. The passing of his closest loved one had once left him utterly devastated. To accompany him through those dark days, I declined the guaranteed postgraduate admission offer from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I resolutely stayed. The school dean privately approached me multiple times. Tiffany, your future is in your own hands. This is no joking matter. Do I even need to explain how precious this opportunity is? Countless people are clamoring for it but can't get in. Are you really determined to give it up just like that? Despite his earnest persuasion, he still couldn't sway me. During that time, I stayed at Moses's place, keeping Grandma Moses company and watching over Nikki every day. He asked, "You're not going to grad school anymore?" I replied, "Not going. I took a trip abroad and realized it wasn't that interesting after all. Might as well work, I'm tired of studying anyway." That day, I told myself I must smile. Nikki shouldn't bear any more pressure because of me. But when I saw my face in the mirror, I realized even my strongest smile couldn't conceal the sorrow in my eyes. Yet Nikki actually believed the comforting words I gave him, thinking I simply didn't want to go because I didn't like it. But, if you truly don't like it, then what was the point of burying myself in studies all those days and nights? I can only blame myself for making the wrong decision and misjudging someone. Mom, Dad, I'm coming. Wait for me to find you. For 3 whole days. I stayed holed up at home researching all sorts of materials. I didn't go back to the company, nor did I care about any resignation procedures. Since the company could kill the hounds once the hares are caught, why should I bother preserving any dignity? Sharon sent a message saying she wanted to throw me a farewell party. Sharon and a few other girls have been following me these past 2 years. We've spent countless days and nights together. It's impossible to say there's no bond between us. I agreed. Tiffany, over here. At the entrance of the private dining room, she waved to me. Everyone was there. How was today? After I left, did the company give you any trouble? When I asked, they all lowered their heads. Well, Tiffany, we've all resigned. Sharon scratched her head, trying her best to appear relaxed. What? Who made this decision? I slammed the table and stood up. No, Tiffany, don't be angry. We resigned voluntarily. Mr. Nikki approved it. This project is so important. It's almost done, and he fired all of you. I couldn't believe it. Milan gave a bitter smile. We were too naive. Wendy cried at the company, saying it was all her fault for making Tiffany you leave. She felt ashamed and insisted on taking responsibility, wanting to take over the project herself. But with her skills, we disagreed and jointly resigned in protest. Mr. Nikki said nothing and approved our resignation applications. Milan tried to sound nonchalant, but couldn't stop her eyes from reddening. A year of burning the midnight oil, all that was so hard-won. Who could willingly give it up without a fight? Everyone's here. Tiffany. Wendy entered the room still holding Nikki's arm, smiling sweetly. When she saw me, she quickly pulled her hand away, trotted over, and grabbed my arm with teary eyes. Tiffany, so it was you who made them leave. This was your own project, how could you bear to do this? Her impassioned speech left me utterly stunned. I stared at her, momentarily at a loss for which curse word would best suit her. What nonsense. We chose to leave ourselves, it has nothing to do with Tiffany. Milan stood up to defend me. But you still resigned, Tiffany, as their leader. You should have advised them not to be so impulsive. The company had to lay people off. Nikki had no choice. You're his girlfriend after all, you should consider his position. Besides, the company has nurtured you for so many years. Shouldn't you think about repaying that kindness? Each sentence seemed calculated, as if she'd anticipated my arrival, rehearsed her lines in advance, deliberately trying to provoke me. Fine, I'll grant her wish then. I shook off her grip on my arm, and she theatrically collapsed to the ground, her eyes welling up before she could even speak. I picked up a glass of red wine and poured it directly over her head. Throughout it all, Nikki stood by without moving a muscle. Who was the shameless one who stole my spot, who pretended to be all innocent afterward while trying to take my place, who claimed they came here to improve themselves but kept crying at every little thing, whining this is too hard and that's too difficult while begging for help, and who was the maggot with atrophied limbs who could only cling to other people's boyfriends? Be grateful to the company. How much fucking money have I made for this company? What have you even done? You dare lecture me, you're not worthy. I hurled the wine glass onto the floor, the shattering glass exploded with a deafening crash. I couldn't stay another second and rushed straight for the private room door, but Nikki grabbed my arm. Calmed down already, over such a small matter, why get so worked up? He pulled me into his embrace. Don't worry, Milan and the others will all stay. Wendy I'll assign to another project. There, be good now. All these years, whenever I got angry, he would wrap his entire body around me like this, waiting for me to gradually calm down. But not this time. I've had enough of this life where he slaps me and then offers a sweet date. I pushed him away and rushed out the door. In the car, I transferred the meal money to Milan, telling them to focus on their work and not let my situation affect them. I had already decided to go abroad and couldn't arrange a place for them. One shouldn't gamble with their own future. If you want to leave, do it properly, make thorough preparations and secure your next step first. The night was deep, and wanting some fresh air, I rolled down the window and drove slowly along the roadside. Not far behind, a black Volkswagen relentlessly pursued me, tailing me through several intersections. In the flickering light of the rearview mirror, I saw Wendy's face, calm to the point of indifference, behind the wheel. Step by step, it closed in on me. She kissed me goodbye. I gasped, this woman was truly insane. I accelerated immediately, trying to shake her off, yet she pursued relentlessly, flirting with disaster at every turn. The car speeds up, a side road appeared on the right, which I didn't notice, when suddenly a tricycle rushed out. The old man riding it seemed stunned, seeing my car. He neither moved forward nor backed up, just froze in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes. Wendy acted like she was on a warpath, not slowing down at all. Her car was already side by side with mine. If I swerved left, we would definitely collide. Otherwise, I could clearly see there was no way I'd stop before hitting that tricycle. At the critical moment, I had to yank the steering wheel right and plow into the greenbelt. Fortunately, there weren't any large trees in the greenbelt. The car swept through and gradually came to a stop. I opened the car door and stumbled out unsteadily. Wendy crouched by the roadside, utterly terrified and putting on an extremely pitiful act, looking as though she were the real victim. Nikki's car arrived belatedly behind them. What's wrong? What happened? Wendy saw Nikki as if clutching at a lifeline, rushed over and grabbed the hem of her clothes, kneeling on the ground, crying pitifully with tears streaming down like pear blossoms in the rain. Nikki, no, it's not like that. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to explain things to her. I didn't mean to compete with her for you. I'm just not as strong as she is. I'm scared that everyone will look down on me. So I always instinctively turn to you for help, because you're the only one I have by my side. Nikki, we grew up together. You know me, my head was dizzy and heavy. And I staggered several times, barely able to stand steady. Tiffany, say something. It wasn't me, was it? It was that old man. He deserved to die. He ruined you. Nikki, go catch him. Quick, he's running away. She crawled over, clutching at my pant leg. I couldn't tell whether she was putting on an act or had truly been frightened out of her wits, babbling incoherently. Either way, it was equally revolting. I mustered all my strength and kicked her away with all my might. She slid several meters across the floor, lying there gasping for breath. Call the police. My vision grew blurry, my head throbbed with pain. Nikki rushed over and held me tight. Tiffany, don't scare me like this. I'm taking you to the hospital. Open your eyes and look at me, you're not allowed to fall asleep. I said call the police, have her arrested. With all my strength, I raised my hand and pointed at Wendy nearby. No, you can't call the police. My grandfather will kick me out of the house. I beg you, don't call the police. My consciousness began to blur, and I could no longer hear the sounds around me. The last sentence, I heard Nicky say to his driver, get some people over here to tow the car away and clean up the scene. I'm taking Tiffany to the hospital. I closed my eyes. In my unconscious state, memories began flooding my mind. When I was 5 years old, my parents' overseas business became increasingly busy. Flying back and forth between countries, traveling for work everywhere, they simply had no time to take care of me. I was too young then to understand or comprehend. I cried and screamed until the food I'd eaten came back up, my head drenched in sweat. That child is too stubborn. I say we starve her for a few days. When she gets hungry enough, she'll eat on her own. A crowd of relatives surrounded me, scolding me for being so unreasonable. How am I supposed to take care of her? I can barely handle 2 grandsons as it is. Just dump the girl with a nanny, you're all spoiling her too much. Leave her at home for a month, and see if she still throws tantrums. After Grandpa said those words, Mom slammed the table in fury, picked me up, and stormed out of necessity. Mom had to take me along everywhere to discuss business. Why is this little sister always crying? Moses' family ancestral home, where I first met Nicky. He took my hand and led me running all through the mansion. That was the happiest afternoon of my life during those years. Tiffany, time to go home, Mom called me, but I refused to leave. I stayed in the car all day, and although she was with me, she spent most of her time on the phone, barely speaking to me. That afternoon, I was having too much fun to hear a word Mom said. She's still so little. How can you take her running around like this? Grandma Moses came out. Looking utterly astonished, how could this be proper for such a young child? Mom said I simply couldn't be apart from her. There really was no other way. I see she's having such fun playing with Nicky. Why not leave her at my place? She can keep Nicky company. Mom refused, but couldn't withstand my stubborn insistence. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't drag me away. Helpless, I was left behind at Moses's old family home. Later, I found out that Nicky had a childhood sweetheart named Wendy. They'd been together since birth, and he was madly in love with her. But Wendy's family was prominent, and as the sole heiress, she looked down on him completely. Grandma Moses couldn't control her grandson and didn't want to earn a reputation for being overly eager to form family ties. Seeing how well I got along with Nicky, she happily kept me around. I don't remember how many times Nicky was scolded by Wendy when we were kids. Every time he cried, it was always me who comforted him. As time passed, we gradually grew up. I began to understand what liking someone truly meant. When I suddenly felt a flutter of attraction for Nicky, I was terrified. I moved out of Moses' place and cut off all contact with Nicky. We met again in our second year of high school when he suddenly transferred to our school and became my classmate. He had grown even thinner, with his hair tousled, and immediately became the object of many girls' affections. Tiffany, why are you pretending not to know me? He saw through me and started chasing me again. I knew from the very beginning that I would fall for him, even though I later found out that Wendy was betrothed in an arranged marriage not long after I left. And the match wasn't Nicky. I just assumed he had given up and was determined to start anew. In less than 2 years, the Derrick family's business suffered consecutive strategic missteps, leading to a sharp decline in their assets. Wendy's younger brother was born, becoming the new hope for the family business, while Wendy was tragically left at the altar. From then on, a Wendy crept into the world of Nicky and me, ubiquitous, relentless, and utterly unhinged. This relationship wore me down more and more, until today when I finally saw things clearly and resolved to walk away. When I woke up in the hospital, I clutched my head. The ward was empty, but from the next room came Wendy's delicate sobs and Nicky's patient comforting. I got out of bed, ready to go straight to complete the discharge procedures. Tiffany, why are you up? You shouldn't be moving around right now. Grandma Moses saw me and hurried over to help me up. At the hospital room door, I caught sight of Nicky holding a bowl of porridge, feeding Wendy one spoonful at a time. When he saw me, he put down the bowl and rushed out, scooping me up in his arms and carrying me back to bed. The doctor said you have a mild concussion and need proper rest. He's really good at pretending. Just moments ago he was sweet-talking Wendy, and in the blink of an eye, he's putting on a show of deep affection in front of me. Tiffany, you really mustn't speed like that again. Thank goodness Wendy noticed and called Nicky, otherwise the consequences would have been unthinkable. Grandma Moses sat by my bedside, holding my hand as she gave me this advice. and I just turned my head incredulously to look at Nicky, asking him, I drive fast. You're saying I drive fast? Grandma Moses was somewhat bewildered by my tone. Nicky quickly pushed her out, telling her to go next door to look after Wendy. Tiffany, Wendy has already been punished. Just forgive her this once. She cried to me for so long. She really didn't mean to do it. Nicky grabbed my hand, his tone pleading. I laughed and slapped him across the face without hesitation. He turned his head away, expressionless. I know you're angry, but just this once, didn't you also throw wine in her face, and kicked her? That makes us even. Hit me if you want. Go ahead, I'll let you. He pulled my hand towards his face. I yanked my hand back, utterly disgusted. Get lost. With a hoarse scream, Grandma Moses and Wendy came rushing over. Tiffany, don't blame Nicky anymore. He can't follow you around 24/7. If you keep this up, you'll only hurt each other's feelings. I can't take it anymore. This place is pure hell. One more moment here, and my chest would explode. I pulled out the 4, ran out of the hospital, and hailed the first taxi I saw. Hurry, master, go. In the car, I gradually calmed down and noticed unread messages on my phone. They were from Mom and Dad. They said they were coming back to the country for 2 days to help me handle some trivial matters, so I could focus on my studies without worries. Judging by the time, their flight should be landing any minute now. Nicky's call came through, but I hung up immediately and blocked the number. When I got home, I lay on the sofa and took nearly an hour to recover. The doorbell rang. I walked to the entrance and saw my parents' figures through the peephole. I pushed open the door and rushed into their arms, finally letting the floodgates of tears burst open. My precious daughter, what's wrong? What happened to your head? Mother looked at me with deep concern, trying to get a better look, but I clung to her tightly, unwilling to let go. My cousin and his wife, following behind, were startled by my reaction. Hearing that my parents were coming back to China to see me, they had tagged along, thinking to enjoy a domestic trip. It took quite a while before I gradually calmed down and entered the house with them, after listening to what I'd been through these past days. Dad paced back and forth in the living room, seething with anger. That bastard from the Moses family, I'll skin him alive. As he spoke, he headed for the door, which opened to reveal Nicky and Wendy hurrying in. You goddamned bastard. My dad kicked Nicky twice in the stomach. How dare you hit someone? Wendy shouted from behind. The cousin and his wife exchanged glances. Uncle, let us young folks handle our own business. Cousin yanked Nicky up and landed 2 right hooks on his face, making him curl up in pain. 2 more kicks followed, leaving his face flushed crimson. I'm calling the cops. Tiffany, just wait. You're going to jail for this. My sister-in-law is a pure-blooded American and only understood 2 words. She wanted to call the police. Charged straight at her with a sweeping kick. Wendy was sent crashing into the wall by the momentum, followed by a flurry of slaps that left her face so swollen she couldn't speak. She was terrified, scrambling up and trying to drag Nicky away to flee, yet Nicky clung desperately to the ground, raising his head to look at me. I couldn't be bothered to spare him another glance. Uncle, Auntie, it's not like that. Please let me explain. Blood seeped from the corner of his lips, but still he refused to give up. Tiffany, explain to your parents. I love you. I only love you. Wait for me. I will definitely come for you. With a fake move from my cousin, Wendy screamed in fright, jabbing the elevator button so hard it might as well have been smoking. The elevator doors closed, and the world was finally quiet again. I quickly followed my parents abroad, but before leaving, I asked my cousin to help me take care of one thing. Copy everything recorded by my car's dashcam that night. Now I need to focus on exam preparation. I'll deal with all this after I'm done. Those with grudges, seek revenge. Those with grievances, air your complaints. Not a single one of you will get away. I began studying like a madman. My thirst for knowledge was insatiable. My parents worried I was overworking myself. Late at night, they would knock on my door, urging me to sleep, but I had already given up on my future once before. Now, everything is within reach, and I can only strive harder to pursue it. For 2 months, I shut myself in my room, devoting all my time to reading except for eating and sleeping. Studying is undoubtedly tedious, but it also magically took away many things. Nicky. The name gradually blurred in my memory, like a sudden gust of wind scattering fallen leaves across the ground. That boy who once brought me endless joy and pain in the past, detached from my world, drifting away, vanishing without a trace. After passing the written exam smoothly, my mother accompanied me on a leisurely trip through Europe. I was addicted to that freedom, that complete transformation, that return to authenticity. I bought many skirts, after starting work. Nicky always complained that skirts made me look unprofessional, So I never wore them again. Now, walking down the street in a skirt, I hold my head high with pride, greeting everyone I meet, taking photos together. They give me heartfelt compliments. In the photos, I'm laughing heartily with different strangers. Turns out, being yourself brings such joy. On the day of the interview, the professor came in person. He wanted to see me for himself. Because my written exam score was over 30 points higher than the second-place candidate, he asked me why I wanted to be his graduate student. I said because of selfhood, like the clear blue of sky and sea, even when dark clouds once gathered and waves churned, after all disasters have passed, on a day of gentle breeze and warm sun, it will return to its truest form. Just as I know myself, I'm smiling now, a smile that's bright and radiant. This is the best answer. My cousin introduced me to a white boy named Mike, who's 4 years younger than me, 8-pack abs, curly-haired puppy, unbearably well-behaved, only knows one phrase in Chinese, taught to him by his cousin, sweetie, 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 drove me absolutely crazy. On the day I returned home, he insisted on coming with me no matter what, said he wanted to protect me, no idea what my cousin had told him. The moment the plane touched down, Nikki somehow got wind of it and rushed over. Tiffany, you're finally back, I missed you so much. You have no idea. He wanted to hug me, but Mike blocked him. Mike recently learned 2 new words. Bastard. He pointed at Nikki, girlfriend. He put his arm around my shoulder and pointed at himself. I almost laughed at his antics. Nikki watched our interaction, his face darkening by several shades. Tiffany, are you still refusing to calm down? For these 2 months, I couldn't eat well, couldn't sleep well, thinking of you every night until I couldn't sleep, and this is how you treat me. We've broken up, I replied to him. I went through all this trouble to prepare a surprise for you. I was planning to propose as soon as you got back, rented a venue, custom-made a wedding dress and a ring. I made so many plans for our future. Didn't you feel anything at all? We've already broken up. I was impatient. You just want to make me angry. Don't you? I've already humbled myself this much, and you're still not satisfied. I never realized before how cold-blooded you are. He reached out to grab me, wanting me to look into his eyes, wanting me to know he was trying to keep me, to soften my heart, so I'd throw myself into his arms again. But this time, I was utterly calm. He and everything about him now seemed like a clown and a joke in my eyes, full of disgrace and absurdity. Mike shoved him away, causing him to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Tiffany, it's you again. Haven't you done enough harm to Nikki? Do you have any idea how much is prepared for you these days, to have your wedding dress custom made? Nikki asked me to personally help you try it on. It was designed by the most expensive designer in the country, with dozens of tailors meticulously sewing it stitch by stitch for you. And look at you now. Are you even worthy of wearing it? I smiled. Custom made for me. Based on your figure? No, it's because you weren't here. Wendy has a similar build to yours. If anything doesn't fit, it can still be altered. Nikki actually had the nerve to explain it to me. No need. Let her wear it. I can see she's dying to put it on as soon as possible. You'd better hurry, or you might not fit into it anymore. Prison uniforms aren't as pretty as wedding dresses. She froze, staring at me intently. What do you mean? What do I mean? Don't you know already? Blame your Nikki for not deleting the dashcam footage properly. You're in deep trouble now. She staggered a step, nearly falling to the ground, her face instantly turning deathly pale. Tiffany, don't be like this. We're all in the same circle. Is it good to make such a big scene, when everyone's impression of you worsens? How can we still get married? Nikki, are you brain dead? When did I ever agree to marry you? We've already broken up. I've already been accepted into a graduate program abroad and will be starting soon. Oh, and another piece of good news, I've decided to settle abroad. I'm back this time just to sell my house and deal with some junk along the way. I glared at Wendy. Even now, she was still clutching her chest and putting on an act. Even Oscar would have to award her Best Actress for this performance. Impossible. You're lying. You're tricking me. Right, you love me so much, you can't live without me. How could you leave? You're just lying to me. He tried to charge forward again, but this time Mike kicked him flying. He lay on the ground, his eyes filled with pleading and humility. Tiffany, don't go, you can't, abandon me, I'm tired. Just as I turned around, Wendy crawled over and grabbed the hem of my skirt. Tiffany, I was wrong, it's my fault. You can't do this, you'll ruin me like this. I crouched down, extended 2 fingers, and pinched her face. How beautiful. Such a lovely face, what a shame. I smiled and pressed my fingers harder. Did you ever think you'd ruin me when you cut me off with your car? I flung her head aside. She collapsed to the ground, completely deflated. I thought, this time at least, her tears were genuine, because she truly felt the pain. But expecting me to soften, dream on, the evidence was captured clearly, even revealing Wendy's sinister expression. The police immediately arrived at Wendy's home, causing quite a commotion. Wendy's status in the Wendy family had already plummeted after her younger brother was born. This incident completely destroyed all the efforts she had made over the years to climb her way up, it said that night. Wendy knelt for hours in the Wendy family home until she lost consciousness from the lashes of old Master Derek's whip. But in the end, the Wendy family still used their connections to spare her from prison, but her reputation was utterly ruined, in the end. Old Master Derek directly arranged a marriage for her with a dissolute young man from a minor family. This was even more unbearable than killing her. On the wedding day, she ran to Mosa's house, begging Nikki for help, but couldn't even get Mosa's door to open. In the end, she had no choice but to marry beneath her station. Rumor has it that after marriage, that dissolute playboy tormented her relentlessly, leaving her utterly unrecognizable. Mosa's family business was also affected by this incident. Wendy was brought into the company through Nikki's connections. Now that her reputation is in tatters, Nikki is the first who cannot escape blame. Nikki is the eldest son of the firstborn in the Mosa's family, deeply cherished by the two elderly heads of the household and groomed as the family successor. But in this incident, Nikki's two paternal uncles seized the momentum to escalate the situation, stripping him of his authority and drastically cutting his influence within the company. From then on, the power of life and death over the Mosa's family business changed hands. In the family war, Nikki lost, utterly defeated. The house didn't sell quickly, so I stayed in the country for a while. Sharon called. "Tiffany, we have a new leader, I'm in charge now." Our project was successfully completed, just some final touches left. She sent a picture of them looking bleary-eyed after pulling an all-nighter, but everyone's faces were beaming with joy. "Congratulations to you all." I gave them a big thumbs up in return. I was also deeply grateful, for they had helped me complete what should have been my share of the work, not for others, but for the self who has struggled hard this past year. "Tiffany, Nikki came to me asking what you like. He even wanted me to put in a good word for him, saying none of this was his true intention, that you've always been the one he loved most." We both laughed at that moment. Never seen someone so shameless. He spends every day with that Wendy, yet has to ask me about his own girlfriend's preferences. I didn't even bother responding. I grunted in response, not really caring anymore. Now when I hear his name, I don't feel anything at all. But Nikki didn't see it that way. Ever since Wendy got married that night, he's been stalking me like crazy, following me wherever I go. Mike tried kicking him out, but he just got back up and kept following. I called the police, but they said since he hadn't done anything wrong, they couldn't charge him like that. I had to find a way to make him give up completely. By a seaside boardwalk, I told Mike to go by water, then I walked straight toward Nikki. When he saw me approaching, his face lit up with joy, thinking there might be a turnaround in the situation. "Tiffany, have you changed your mind?" "I knew it. I knew you'd come back." A grown man, shamelessly crying till his eyes turned red. "The fortune teller said you're my guiding star, that being with you would make my rise meteoric, and you only by staying with me can you find true happiness." He actually used such superstitions to fool me, utterly ridiculous. "Did the fortune teller tell you that I don't love you anymore, Tiffany? I know you're just jealous of how good I am to Wendy. After all these years, you've endured so much hardship with me and given up so many opportunities. How could you possibly not love me? Come back." I truly know I was wrong. I froze, so he had known all along. But that was all in the past now. I really don't love him anymore. I can't even be bothered to think about him anymore. I don't love Wendy at all. He wanted to hold my hand. "I know," I shouted sharply, startling him, a flicker of panic flashing across his features. "I've discovered why you don't love Wendy. I finally understand. Turns out you're just vain and insecure." He gave an awkward smile, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the railing of the boardwalk. "What nonsense are you talking about? As a child, you desperately pursued Wendy, yet couldn't earn a single proper glance from her. Later, when she fell on hard times and came clinging to you, you deliberately kept things ambiguous, neither accepting nor rejecting her. I could never understand why before. Now I understand everything clearly, because this way, you can show off in front of those brothers you look down on and say, 'Hey, buddy, look, she used to be as delicate as a white lotus, untouched and untouchable, but now she's clinging to me like a dog.' You're stringing her along, just like she strung you along before. You're taking revenge on her." Nikki was struck by my words, his legs beginning to weaken. "The better you treat her, the more others will praise your generosity, applaud your broad-mindedness, and say you understand human relationships, but you will never marry her." My words sent him stumbling backward in shock. Even though you know I never liked her, even though you know how much suffering she's caused me, you know everything perfectly well, yet you still play dumb and refuse to commit. Because you're certain I can't leave you, Nikki, from start to finish, you've put on a grand performance, pretending to generously use her while also stringing me along with affection, all for the sake of your own vanity. You're utterly unworthy of love. Your hypocrisy makes me sick. He collapsed completely, unable to even lift his head. When Mike returned, he asked what was wrong. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and joked with him, if a venomous snake bites another venomous snake, can the venom kill its own kind? He scratched his head in confusion. I glanced back at Nikki. The poison was starting to take effect. Harm set, harm get. He'll have to suffer the consequences of his own misdeeds. Nikki no longer followed me openly, but I knew he was always lurking in the shadows. He still refused to give up. The house matter was finally settled. I decided not to wait any longer and personally took the agent to show people around, even if it meant selling for a bit less. Getting it sold sooner would mean leaving sooner. I never expected Wendy to show up so suddenly. She looked utterly destitute, her arms covered in bruises. Clearly life hadn't been kind to her. She rushed forward, pulling a kitchen knife from her bag, completely unhinged. Mike shielded me as we retreated to the stairwell, with her chasing us relentlessly. Nikki rushed forward and started wrestling with her, giving me quite a fright. You're still protecting her. I must have been blind. I should have trampled you underfoot for life like when we were kids. Damn simp. You deserve to be toyed with by me. She and Nikki were locked in a struggle. Bitch. My life, it used to shine so bright, and you ruined everything. Bitch. You bitch. Nikki freed up a hand and slapped her several times in succession. The two wrestled on the ground, likely fueled by adrenaline, with neither gaining the upper hand. You slut, and your lover too, two pieces of trash. It was Wendy's husband, that playboy she married. Three people formed a brawling tangle, the scene utterly unsightly. Each of them harbored intense hatred for the other two, throwing punches and kicks with all their might. Mike covered my eyes, telling me not to look. The wail of police sirens grew closer, and before long, all three were escorted into the police station. After that, I never paid attention to any news about them again. 3 days later, the house was transferred. I took the money and bought the earliest available flight ticket. On the plane, I fell into a deep sleep. For a full 10 hours, I slept with extraordinary peace and tranquility. Mike kept watch over me until the plane landed, only then reluctantly waking me up. I rubbed my eyes. Outside the window was dusk. I held Mike's hand, laughing all the way as we weaved through the crowd. In the glow of the sunset, I spotted Mom and Dad coming to pick us up at the airport. Happiness, it turns out, is so simple. Story 2. Luke had another paranoid episode, this time suspecting me of cheating behind his back. To force me into confessing and swearing my innocence, he took our 5-year-old son away and left him with his ambiguously close female secretary. Refusing to come home for a long time, I asked him one last time, "Are you coming back or not?" Luke sneered, sitting motionless, dissatisfied with my attitude. Our youngest son clung to the female secretary, also saying he didn't want mommy but wanted the sister to stay with him. I nodded. I completely gave up on the father and son, turned around, and walked away. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. Seeing my movement, the crowd behind me instantly fell into silence, until my fingertips touched the door handle of the private room. Behind me came the harsh screech of a chair being violently pushed back against the floor. Luke's expression changed abruptly as he stood up, angrily calling out my name. "Teresa, is this the attitude you bring when you come to apologize and beg me to come back?" I frowned, turning back to correct him coldly. "I never said I came to apologize. Moreover, it was just that during a job interview, when the male HR representative walked me to the company gate. I politely smiled and thanked him. Was that wrong?" Luke was clearly infuriated by my stubbornly unrepentant attitude, and by his side, our youngest son Ethan was devouring his 5th serving of ice cream, the very treat I usually forbid him from having too much of. Completely oblivious to his parents' quarrel, his stomach is delicate, too much cold food easily gives him stomachaches. I couldn't help it and called out to him in a warning tone, "Ethan, no more eating." To my surprise, Ethan stretched out his little arms to protect his ice cream. Frowning, he angrily and irritably snapped at me. "I won't." The onlooking Shirley, who was Luke's female secretary, wore an even deeper smile on her face. She gently stroked Ethan's head, seemingly mediating but actually fanning the flames. She said, "Oh come now, Mrs. Lewis, if the child wants to eat it, Just let him, I'm taking care of Ethan. He won't eat anything wrong, it wasn't her own child, so of course she didn't care. I was burning with anger, wanting to retort and argue with her, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw Luke, who remained indifferent as his wife and secretary clashed right beside him, and the one who happily took Shirley's hand, deliberately in front of her mother. Ethan said sweetly to another woman, "Thank you, Shirley, you're so good to me. I like you the most, Tilda." All the words he wanted to say suddenly stuck in his throat. It was like having a bucket of cold water poured over his head. The anger in his chest instantly extinguished. There were also a few of Luke's friends at the scene, but without exception, they either watched from the sidelines or remained silent. The mocking and scrutinizing gazes fell upon me, making me feel like a helpless clown standing alone. Whatever. It suddenly occurred to me, Ethan can get close to whoever he wants. Luke is willing to take his secretary everywhere to make a fool of me. So let him, I don't care anymore, and I don't want to bother. Ignoring Luke's icy stare and Shirley's provocative gaze, I calmly pushed the door open and left. The door slowly closed behind me. The people inside didn't seem to care at all, as if they wanted me to hear them. "Luke, your wife seems angry, aren't you going to comfort her?" To be honest, Teresa isn't as petty as you made her out to be. I thought she'd get into a fight with Shirley, ha ha ha. Exactly, what a shame. All sorts of jeers and mocking laughter from those who enjoyed watching the drama unfold. Amidst the noise came the sound of a lighter flicking. Luke's icy voice dissolved into the smoke, his emotions murky and unreadable. "I think I've spoiled her too much, sneaking out to find a job behind my back. Not only embarrassing me but also flirting with other men. TSK, she shows no remorse at all. Seems like the lesson I taught her wasn't harsh enough." His words made the others even more excited. "Exactly, women shouldn't be spoiled. Come on, I'll take you to a special place, guaranteed to satisfy you all. Hey, what about the kid? Should we bring them along too? Haha, what should we do, Ethan? Your mom doesn't want you anymore. Want to come play with us uncles?" Ethan's voice was loud and clear. He said, "If she doesn't want me, then I don't want her either. I have Shirley, that's enough for me." It felt like a nail had been driven through my foot. The nails had torn my feet to bloody shreds, leaving me unable to move. Just then, I heard a familiar voice, warm yet carrying a hint of coolness. It stood out starkly against the surrounding haze of malice and sneers. "Don't you think this is going too far?" After he finished speaking, the private room fell silent. For a long while, no one spoke. It was he who finally eased the tension, saying gently, "I won't be joining you later. You all go ahead and have fun, Ethan. Mom isn't in a good mood tonight. Go back with Shirley." "Shirley, sorry for the trouble. Luke, stay behind later. We need to talk." Luke gave no response. Ethan and Shirley had no objections to the arrangement. The others, seeing that neither of them intended to join the gathering, immediately lost their enthusiasm. The dinner gathering ended just like that. I sniffled, tilting my head back to hold back tears as I continued walking toward the underground parking garage. When I finally found my car, I suddenly realized I'd left my bag in the private dining room. The car keys were all inside the bag. There was no other way. I had to stand by the car and wait. I planned to go back and get them after everyone had left. The underground parking garage was chilly at night, and my legs grew sore from standing too long. I slowly crouched down, hugging my knees, staring blankly at an ant passing by on the ground. I don't know how much time had passed. The sound of steady, composed footsteps gradually drew nearer. Belatedly, I raised my head. A warm coat was gently draped over my shoulders. I looked up. My gaze met Henry's eyes, tender as a spring breeze. He smiled at me, his handsome face alight with laughter, the faint red mole at the corner of his eye coming vividly to life. Henry extended his slender, pale fingers and magically produced my small shoulder bag. "Teresa, were you waiting for this? You're still as forgetful as ever, luckily. I remember everything for you." I suddenly felt like crying. Like Luke, Henry was also my childhood sweetheart. But what if I had chosen him instead? Would the ending have been better? 6 years ago, something happened in my family. Adoptive brother John suddenly suffered a major car accident and fell into a coma, rushed into the emergency room. Not long after, a group of debt collectors suddenly showed up at our doorstep. They held huge IOUs with my brother's signature, forcing me to repay the debt immediately. With our parents long gone, I had to juggle caring for my brother, seeking connections everywhere to find renowned doctors, while dealing with these inexplicably appearing, aggressive debt collectors, helpless to the point of near collapse. At that time, Henry's family business had some problems, and he was abroad on a business trip. The only one by my side was Luke. He checked the IOUs and went through my family company's accounts. "Tell me, These debts are indeed real. Perhaps my brother was afraid I'd worry, choosing to shoulder this burden alone. That's why he never mentioned it to me before. With no other choice, I had to use all the available money at home to repay the debts. I knew nothing about running a company, so Luke temporarily managed it for me. But it still wasn't enough. The company had been barely surviving under my brother's efforts, and now with him down, the stock prices plummeted, pushing the company to the brink of bankruptcy. The person who hit my brother fled the scene. The police determined from his wrecked old car that even if the perpetrator were caught, he likely wouldn't be able to pay the astronomical medical bills. I had no choice but to continue selling off our family's properties and cars, including all the designer bags and expensive jewelry my brother had previously given me. Though my brother's life was saved, his injuries were too severe. He never woke up. Continuous treatment and care is a long and costly drain. It wasn't until something like this happened that I realized my elder brother had raised me too well, piling up gold and jewels around me. Like nurturing a canary in a mountaintop castle, he let me live without worries, knowing only how to play and enjoy life. It's come to this. My mind is completely blank, utterly incapable of earning enough to support him. I tried looking for work, but for some reason, I kept hitting walls everywhere. Even jobs paying just $2,000 or $3,000 a month turned me down. I stared at the meticulously crafted resume in my hands, then at the undergraduate diploma I'd earnestly worked to obtain. A profound sense of self-doubt washed over me. Just as I reached the end of my rope, preparing to borrow money from anyone who'd lend to tide me over, Luke proposed to me. He knelt on one knee to confess his love. Presenting the beautiful ring he had prepared years ago, he said that long ago, he had fallen for me. He no longer wanted us to be just good friends. The timing wasn't quite right for me, but he couldn't wait any longer. He wanted to take our relationship to the next level. To that end, he was willing to take over my family's struggling company, settle all our debts, and cover my brother's ongoing medical expenses. He gave me his word, even if there's only a sliver of hope. He would do his utmost to help treat my brother, so that one day he might wake up. I had been hesitating before. It was his final words that moved me, and so, I agreed to marry him. Henry slammed on the brakes and pulled the car over to the side of the road. The night was deep, and all around was silent and empty. Henry was originally driving me home. It had been a long time since we'd seen each other. Luke and I got married. On the way, we started chatting. And somehow the conversation turned to 6 years ago. I turned my head to look at him. The bright yellow streetlights cast their glow, illuminating Henry's handsome, chiseled profile. His expression wasn't great, but he still managed to force a gentle smile. Back then, why didn't you contact me? I was a bit surprised and couldn't help saying, I did call you, but I called many times, and you never answered. Later, Luke got in touch with you and told me you had some trouble abroad and couldn't make it back, so I didn't dare disturb you again. After I finished speaking, Henry fell silent. His gaze remained fixed ahead, the air around him suddenly growing heavy. After a long silence, he suddenly let out a cold laugh. When he finally spoke, his words came through clenched teeth. So that's how it is. So, what are your plans next? Downstairs in the residential complex, Henry suddenly asked me. His figure was tall and slender, dressed in a comfortable casual shirt set, his demeanor as gentle as jade. He looked down at me with tender eyes, his gaze revealing unconcealed concern. What happened today? Luke went too far. I've already talked to him, but I don't know if he'll listen. After all, this is between you two as a couple. Maybe you still need to communicate calmly. I shook my head. There's no need for that. Henry paused slightly, his eyes flickering. He asked with a puzzled expression, why do you say that? I looked up, glancing toward the direction of our home in the high-rise where the lights still hadn't come on, knowing Luke wouldn't be bringing the child home tonight either. In that case, whether this home exists or not makes no difference. I've made up my mind to get a divorce, so I don't intend to hide it from Henry. I told him, tonight I'll pack all my belongings, next I'll continue job hunting. Then negotiate the divorce with Luke. Fortunately, Luke has been quite generous to me these years, especially after I gave birth to Ethan. It gave me a lot of compensation. Even if I can't find a job for a while, I have no financial pressure for the time being. I pondered about my future life and drifted off for a moment. I didn't notice Henry hiding in the night, unable to suppress the upward curve of his lips. He smiled and asked, have you found a place to stay yet? If not, perhaps I can help. His tone was so sincere. His attitude remained as gentle and affectionate as ever, as if we weren't meeting after years apart, but remained childhood sweethearts who'd grown up together without ever being separated. My trust in him made me not refuse this kindness. Since the divorce decision was only finalized tonight, I truly hadn't yet found a new place to live, and so, just like that, Henry went home with me and helped me pack my luggage. He owned multiple properties and could effortlessly lend me one of them to live in. By the time everything was packed, dawn was almost breaking, a faint light pierced through the morning mist. As if someone had pressed the city's start button, crowds emerged and traffic began to flow. Henry stood at the doorstep of his villa, observing my exhausted expression. He thoughtfully refrained from further disturbance. With a smile, he said, "Go inside and get some rest. Call me anytime if you need anything later." I nodded and bid him farewell. Watching Henry's car drive away, I turned back into the house and collapsed onto the new bed, falling asleep without a care. When I woke again, the sun was already setting in the west. Lying face down on the pillow, I casually picked up my phone to check it. The screen was filled with missed calls and hundreds of messages. I shuddered, instantly feeling much more awake. Looking closely, the vast majority were sent by Luke. Hesitantly, I tapped on a voice message. Luke's furious, irritated tone immediately filled the quiet, empty room. "Teresa, you've grown some nerve, daring to run away from home. Don't think you're something special just because Henry is helping you. Have you forgotten you're already married with a child? Can't you just behave yourself? I'm giving you one last chance, right now, immediately, this instant, get your ass back home. Otherwise, I'll have them turn off your brother's life support machines. Don't push me." He secretly installed surveillance cameras at home. Last night's moving video with Henry, he probably saw everything. I abruptly sat up in bed. The air conditioner in the room steadily delivered a comfortable breeze. Yet I suddenly felt as if plunged into an icy cellar, my hands and feet turning cold and weak in an instant. I never would have imagined Luke would actually threaten me with my brother's life. He had completely forgotten. Back when he proposed to me, what promises did he make? The vows once spoken from his lips have now become sharp knives stabbing into my heart. My body remained frozen for what felt like an eternity. At last, trembling, I picked up my phone and opened the unread message sent by Henry. It was completely different from Luke's furious threats after our relationship turned sour. Henry told me tenderly and considerately that he had already ordered takeout ingredients for me. "When I wake up, I can just do some light cooking and have a meal ready." He reminded me to remember to eat on time afterwards, told me to send him a message after getting up. He knew of a dessert shop that made delicious little cakes. By the time I finish my meal, the fresh dessert delivery should probably arrive. So meticulous and thoughtful. For a fleeting moment, I thought it was a message from my brother who had just woken up in the hospital. My eyes couldn't help but well up with tears. So I immediately gave him a call. The call was answered quickly on the other end, a voice as gentle as water, accompanied by a doting chuckle. "Teresa, has the little sleepyhead finally decided to wake up?" I sniffled and said with a choked voice, "I need your help." Henry drove me to the hospital. We split up to cover more ground. He went to handle my brother's transfer procedures while I rushed to the ward to check on my brother's condition. As I flung open the door of the VIP ward, I suddenly froze in my tracks. The room was bathed in ample light, with warm and bright sunshine streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A few small potted plants on the windowsill appeared somewhat wilted, as I hadn't been around to water them these past few days. On the hospital bed lay a pale yet handsome man, so peaceful he might have simply been asleep. Moving carefully around the array of sophisticated medical equipment by the bedside, I slowly took a seat next to him. John has remained unchanged year after year, still looking exactly the same. His eyelashes are long, and he's grown considerably thinner since before the accident, yet this only serves to accentuate his refined and handsome features. Lying unconscious in the hospital bed, he resembles nothing so much as a sleeping beauty prince awaiting his princess's kiss. Suddenly, I recall that period not long ago. The attending physician mentioned a newly imported medication from abroad, which was extremely expensive, but there was a high probability it could wake my brother up. Not long ago, the specially hired caregiver also told me she had seen my brother's fingers twitch, and his eyes would occasionally open for a moment. I suspect they're all lying to me, otherwise, why would they all witness such things? Why is it that only I never see it? Clearly, I'm the one my brother loves most. I tried calling his name. He remained still with his eyes closed, giving no response. I grabbed his long, broad palm again, stroking the veins on its back, squeezing each of his large knuckles one by one. He let me knead and fuss over him without a hint of temper. Unwilling to give up, I leaned down closer to his cheek, attempting to forcibly pry open his eyelids with my hand. "Teresa." I was startled for a moment. I stared at my brother for a long while before realizing the voice didn't come from him. Henry stood at the door and said calmly, I've arranged everything. You should come out first. I nodded and stepped aside to make way for the doctors and nurses at the door. Fortunately, Luke's threats against me remain verbal for now. We still have time to move my brother to a safer place. Free from his control, I followed closely behind as my brother was relocated. Henry walked leisurely by my side. None of us noticed. Behind us, a doctor quietly made a phone call. After settling my brother in Henry's friend's private hospital, he suddenly said to me, "Teresa, where you're living now isn't safe enough. Luke could easily find you if he wanted to. I'm afraid, given his personality, he might take you away and lock you up, or even resort to violence against you. You need to move to an even more secluded place." I trusted him completely and let him make all the arrangements. Fortunately, I hadn't unpacked from yesterday's move yet. I won't need to pack when I get back. I can just grab my things and leave. At the same time, my brother has been safely relocated, so I have no more worries holding me back. I immediately sent the already drafted divorce agreement to Luke. I informed him that we'd meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau next week. Luke's phone call came through frantically the very next second. He's emotionally unstable right now. Nothing I say would make a difference. So I hung up and muted my phone. After doing all that, I looked up. I discovered Henry gazing at me with a beaming smile. He seemed in high spirits. Leaning over to fasten my seatbelt, unable to contain his excitement, he said, "Perfect. Now then, I'm going to take you away from here. You're asking me to live in the basement." The basement before me was well decorated, fully equipped with soft furnishings and appliances, exuding a cozy style. But the lighting isn't great, especially since Henry didn't install bright overhead lights. As a result, the room overall felt rather dim and quiet. I have no doubt that living in such a place for long would lead to depression. Henry quietly observed my reaction without showing any expression. Seeing my obvious resistance, he smiled and changed his tone. "Teresa, you've misunderstood. I was just showing you around. There are other rooms. Keep looking and choose one you like." I had no doubts. I followed him upstairs to continue touring this luxurious hillside villa. After visiting every corner, I collapsed exhausted onto the plush sofa. I couldn't help but sigh. Being rich is truly wonderful. If my brother hadn't had that accident, he probably could have bought me a luxurious villa like this too, right? Henry took a bottle of sweet soda from the fridge and handed it to me. He tentatively asked if he could stay here during this period as well. This place is quite remote, far from the city center. If he went back to his old place and had to drive over in case of an emergency, it might be too late, he explained to me in a gentle voice. As if that minor misunderstanding from earlier had left him somewhat concerned, afraid of offending me again or making me unhappy, I completely failed to recognize his masterful trap of advancing by retreating. Opening his eyes wide, he said, "But this is your house. Why would you need my permission to live here? Besides, there are so many rooms here, and so much space. There's no need to worry about invading each other's privacy." Henry suddenly smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He said softly, "Okay, thank you, Teresa. Are you hungry? I'll go cook first." He actually knows how to cook. I couldn't help but marvel at this again. Among the four of us, Henry has the best family background, with outstanding abilities and financial status. At a young age, the company he founded has already reached IPO level, generating countless profits, yet he remains gentle, refined, always smiling, and humble with impeccable manners. His personality couldn't be better. Before this, I had only eaten meals cooked by my brother. I have no idea Henry when he learned to cook. In contrast, both Luke and I are kitchen disasters. We usually rely on the nanny for meals. Thinking of Luke, I took out my phone to check. Just happened to see his new message to me. "You should at least give me a chance to talk. Seems he's calmed down now." After some thought, I replied, "Fine, let's set a time." It was as if he'd been glued to his phone waiting. The next second, a video call popped up. I hesitated for a moment but chose to answer it anyway. Two figures appeared on the video call. Luke was still wearing a suit, and judging by the background, he must still be at the office. His defiant brows and eyes were tinged with heavy exhaustion. When his gaze fell upon me, a flicker of unease and ingratiation flashed through. Luke lowered his head and said to Ethan in his arms, "Have you forgotten how Dad just taught you? Speak." Ethan pouted his lips. The expression still showed defiance. Not even glancing my way, turning his head away, he muttered reluctantly, "Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have only played with Shirley and ignored you." After speaking, both father and son looked up to gauge my reaction. Seeing my cold, indifferent expression remained unchanged, Luke's expression stiffened slightly. He took a deep breath and finally bowed his head to me. "Teresa, honey, this is all my fault. I lost my head for a moment and listened to someone's stupid idea of using Shirley to upset you. There's absolutely nothing between us, really. I apologize for all those awful things I said to you before. Forgive me, let's not get divorced, okay? That's it, I frowned, about to speak. Suddenly, a hand holding a phone reached over from beside me. I clearly saw the photo above and froze, my expression instantly turning extremely grim. I snatched Henry's phone and held the photo up to the screen. I sneered, "And you call this nothing, Luke? Getting frisky with your secretary in the office was caught on camera. What else do you have to say for yourself?" Luke's pupils constricted sharply. He instinctively covered Ethan's eyes. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, knowing he was in the wrong, and said guiltily, "It was an accident. I was drunk that day and mistook her for you." In a moment, "No, right away. I'll fire her right away." "Okay, honey, don't call me that." I couldn't help but interrupt him. My face twisted in disgust. "Luke, I feel sick, unable to bear it any longer." I hung up the phone, though I'd long wanted to divorce Luke. But seeing those photos of him cheating with another woman still made me feel as disgusted as swallowing a live fly. Henry gently patted my back in comfort, urging me to eat first. He'd simply prepared 8 dishes, all my favorites. I wanted to say I was too angry to eat right now, but after glancing at the dishes, the words died on my lips, and I silently picked up my bowl and chopsticks instead. After eating my fill, I half-heartedly got up to clear the table, offering to do the dishes. Henry saw right through me and said with a smile, "Leave it, I'll do them later." So I plopped back down onto my seat with a clear conscience. Henry finished washing the dishes, came out of the kitchen, and even casually prepared a beautiful fruit platter for me. People simply can't be compared to one another. I lavished praise on Henry for his domestic skills and competence. He accepted all the compliments with a beaming smile. He suddenly tossed out a casual joke, "If I'm so great, have you ever regretted not marrying me instead?" Without thinking, I blurted out, "Of course I have. Compared to Luke, that temperamental and paranoid control freak, Henry is practically the perfect husband." I didn't notice Henry's suddenly darkened gaze fixed on me, slapping his thigh in regret. "If only your phone had worked back then. I could have borrowed money directly from you instead of having to marry Luke to pay off my debts." Henry became interested. He placed his hand on the table, propping his chin with a single palm. With a gentle smile, she gossiped, "Oh, sounds like you don't like him at all." I gestured with my thumb and forefinger, "Just a tiny bit. What I feel for him is more like the affection between good friends." Henry opened his mouth as if wanting to ask something, but after some hesitation, he ultimately chose to remain silent. At this moment, I became a bit wiser, from his eyes filled with eager anticipation yet forcibly restrained. I seemed to understand his unspoken words. What he wanted to ask was, "How about me? How did I feel about him?" He didn't voice the question, instead raising his cup to take a sip of water. I also lowered my head and continued eating from the fruit platter. We tacitly avoided the subject by mutual understanding. After Henry had treated us to good food and drinks for 3 days, Luke agreed to the divorce, but on one condition: I had to meet him in person. I knew he wouldn't give up so easily. I was curious to see what excuse he'd come up with this time, what trick he'd try to pull. Henry drove me to the appointment. As soon as we met, Luke stood up abruptly, glaring fiercely at Henry. He said through gritted teeth, "I trusted you as a friend, and all along you've been trying to steal my wife. Are you even human?" The moment they met, the air was thick with tension. I frowned, trying to get Luke to calm down, but he suddenly looked at me with a pitiful expression, as if he'd been set up. "Honey, don't be fooled by him. Back then I was angry that you didn't want to rely on me and wanted to go find a job. It was Henry who gave me this terrible idea. He said that I should find a woman to flirt with, make you jealous and feel threatened, so you wouldn't dare run around and would focus all your attention on me." Luke pointed at Henry and loudly accused. After he finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. I didn't even turn my head to glance at Henry, just calmly said, "I believe him." Luke widened his eyes in disbelief, his expression showing a trace of cracking. "You?" His devastated gaze shifted suspiciously between me and Henry. He asked me in a trembling voice, "What do you mean, you believe him? Then what am I?" What was supposed to be a divorce discussion somehow turned into Henry and Luke's confrontation. Luke couldn't produce any evidence to prove that all those foolish things he'd done before were instigated by Henry, but Henry had plenty of evidence about how Luke had screwed him over 6 years ago. Henry pulled up pictures of a few foreigners on his phone and laid them on the table. With rare sarcasm and a sharp tone, he questioned, "I wondered why I ran into so much trouble during that time for no reason. Was it you who sent them to steal my phone?" making it impossible for Teresa to reach me when the incident happened. And also, John's company is about to go bankrupt, owing so much money. How come I never heard even a whisper about this? He came fully prepared, catching Luke completely off guard. A thick stack of documents was slammed onto the table. Henry tilted his head slightly, staring at the pale-faced Luke with a faint, ambiguous smile. He said quietly, "At the time, you even reached out to many companies, telling them not to hire Teresa. You cut off all of Teresa's escape routes, leaving her so panicked and helpless that she had no choice but to accept your proposal. Didn't you? What a dirty trick, Luke." My mind went blank. I suddenly looked up, staring fixedly at Luke, yet he rather awkwardly avoided my gaze. "We've been married for 6 years." This single unconscious gesture told me everything. I knew it. Henry was probably telling the truth about all this. My ears were ringing, listening to Luke's dying struggle of excuses, as well as Henry's resounding rebuttals and challenges. Word by word, Luke was left sweating profusely, speechless. Luke, unable to win the argument, couldn't help but reach for my hand, pleading weakly for me not to believe Henry. I didn't speak, slowly withdrawing my hand, and then, with all my strength, I slapped Luke hard across the face. I took a deep breath. Trying to control my trembling body, gritting my teeth, I said, "I want a divorce. If you don't agree, then let's just go to court." Luke turned pale, but his eyes were terrifyingly bloodshot. He slightly parted his lips, as if wanting to call my name again, but I couldn't bear to stay another moment. Turning away to leave him with only the sight of my rapidly retreating back, Henry raised an eyebrow at Luke, who stood frozen in place, with a triumphant smugness, hands in pockets. He leisurely followed me as we walked away. When we reached the roadside, Henry gallantly opened the passenger door for me. He circled to the other side and got in, but wasn't in any hurry to start the car. I knew nothing at the time. The moment I returned to the country, it was to attend your wedding with Luke. Henry lowered his eyes, revealing a somewhat bitter smile. I found it hard to accept, so I went abroad again soon after. Not long after, news came that you were pregnant. I couldn't focus on work back then, so I wandered aimlessly on solo trips, forcing myself not to check your and Luke's social media updates. It wasn't until much later that I suddenly recalled some suspicious details, which prompted me to start investigating gradually. Henry turned to look at me with an apologetic tone. I'd actually gathered all this evidence long ago, but you and Luke were already married with such a grown child. I struggled with whether to tell you. I'm sorry, Teresa, he blamed himself, saying, "If only I had noticed earlier." Suppressing the grief and anger within, I raised my hand to wipe away my tears. Shaking my head, I said, "This isn't your fault. I should thank you for telling me the truth. Otherwise, I'd still be like a fool, completely kept in the dark by Luke." Just mentioning that name fills my heart with hatred. Back when my brother had the accident and fell into a coma, I was alone, confused, and panicked, not knowing what to do. My first thought wasn't to rely on others, but to shoulder the burden myself, desperately searching for work everywhere. Although Luke, Henry and I were childhood sweethearts who grew up together, but I never expected them to help me unconditionally. Yet I never could have imagined, Luke not only refused to help, but also kicked me when I was down, making a complete fool of me. To think he'd resort to such despicable means to force me into accepting his proposal when I had no way out. All these years I'd been so grateful to him, even when I wanted to terminate the pregnancy immediately after the unexpected conception. Yet at Luke's pleading, I gave birth to Ethan, and the result is, Luke treated me like this, from the initial deception, concealment, and framing, to the current paranoia, emotional neglect, and infidelity. Knowing him and growing up with him, I must have been cursed for 8 lifetimes. My fingers trembled with rage as I took out my phone to amend the divorce agreement. The original terms stated that I would leave with nothing, and our child would remain with Luke. I had initially tolerated this, despite him being the guilty party in our marriage, out of gratitude for Luke's years of support toward me and my brother. But now, absolutely not. I'll make Luke pay back what he owes me twice over. The words on my phone screen blurred through my tears. My hands trembled too violently to type. Henry let out a soft sigh, his warm, large hands enveloping my ice-cold fingers. He coaxed, "I'll help you, Teresa, don't worry." He tried to divert my attention. He asked with a smile, "Want to visit your brother at the hospital? I've put him on the latest imported medication, it's working well. The nurse says he's been in good spirits lately." Tears soaked my lashes, my face a complete mess from crying. Hearing his gentle tone, my grief-stricken, helpless heart suddenly found a feather to rest upon. The warm, tender comfort slowly eased the rigid tension in my overstrained body. I slowly wrapped my fingers around his 2 long digits, feeling safe and secure. I sniffled and mumbled softly, "Thank goodness you're here." Henry's smile deepened. He raised his other arm and gently wiped away the tear stains at the corner of my eye. The divorce agreement was Henry asked a top-tier lawyer to redraft for me. At the same time, he assured me he would make Luke pay the price. I trusted him completely. Arriving at the new hospital, this time I saw with my own eyes my brother's fingers twitching slightly. The doctor told me I could visit more often during this time and talk to him more. Perhaps one day my brother might wake up. This is practically the only thing that's made me happy in so long. It's been 6 years since my brother's car accident. 6 whole years. He never responded to a single word I said, yet 6 years ago. On the day of his accident, it was just an ordinary, tranquil morning. Bored after waking up, I kept calling him to pester him. At that time John was at the office, busy with work and meetings. The phone occasionally carried the sound of his fingers tapping on the keyboard, along with his deep, magnetic whispers as he gave instructions to his assistant. But no matter what he was doing, as long as I deliberately called him brother, John would immediately pause his work and respond with a soft hum to me. I could hear employees reporting their work to him over the phone, constantly being inexplicably interrupted by his hum, then continuing nervously. He didn't seem embarrassed, but I was the first to feel awkward. I stayed quiet for a long time, nearly falling back asleep on the bed, yet the call remained connected. Perhaps the meeting had ended. John picked up his phone, and his voice became much clearer. He smiled and asked me, "Miss me?" I drowsily lifted my head from the soft pillow and casually replied, "Of course, come back soon to keep me company." There was a rustling sound from the other end. Moments later, I heard John walk out of the office announcing that we'd have a half-day holiday today. He coaxed me over the phone, telling me not to fall asleep yet. On his way home by car later, he would stop by my favorite restaurant to pack lunch. By the time I finished dawdling through my morning routine, he'd be home to eat with me. Reluctantly, I dragged myself out of bed. First, I played some games on the tablet for a while. Under John's persistent supervision, I reluctantly gave up searching for drinks in the fridge and went to wash up in the bathroom instead. By this point, our call duration had reached 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 23 seconds. A tremendous crash followed by a series of explosions rang out. My phone slipped from my hand and fell to the ground with a clatter. Then, the call ended. I stood in the quiet, cozy room, stunned and bewildered. Hesitantly, I called out, "Bro." No more responses could be heard. On the Henry's 7th day staying at the villa, Luke agreed to leave with nothing and additionally gifted me 10% of the Lewis family's company shares. I said I didn't want to see him anywhere other than the Civil Affairs Bureau. He agreed as well. The annoying matter was finally coming to an end. I thanked Henry and told him about my intention to move out. Henry, dressed in casual and relaxed home clothes, was originally working on his computer. Hearing my words, his typing fingers suddenly paused. He slowly raised his head, his expression calm, even somewhat puzzled as he asked me, "Why, are you unhappy living here? Or is there something you're dissatisfied with? I can have everything changed today." I was slightly surprised by the confusion he showed, but I still broke it down to explain to him, "I'm not unhappy or dissatisfied. Everything here is great. It's just that I can't possibly live here with you forever." "Why not?" For the first time, Henry interrupted me somewhat forcefully. Seeing my stunned expression, Henry immediately realized he had overreacted. He quickly softened, closing his laptop, gently persuading me, "If you leave here, won't you still need to find a new place to stay? My house is just sitting empty anyway. Teresa, you can treat this place as your own home. Don't be so formal with me, okay?" It really makes me sad, such a gentle plea, yet in that last sentence, I detected a faint hint of pressure. Was it my imagination? I remained silent, and the atmosphere around us gradually grew somewhat eerie. Henry stared at me with expectant eyes, not blinking once. Only after I reluctantly nodded, did his face bloom into a happy smile again. After that, I've hinted many more times that I wanted to move out, but every time, Henry would brush it off with various excuses. The problem is, he knows exactly that I'm the type who yields to coaxing but not coercion. Sometimes I get so frustrated I almost want to start an argument with him. Henry suddenly fell silent. Glistening tears slowly welled up in his eyes, hovering on the brink of falling. His beautiful face etched with sorrow, a pitiful, aggrieved expression that seemed wounded by my actions. My anger instantly dissipated, leaving me tongue-tied and speechless. Openly leaving wasn't an option, and sneaking away wasn't possible either. The garage was locked, making it impossible for me to walk down this winding mountain road to the city. Hailing a cab wasn't feasible either. Outside vehicles got stopped at the mountain's base and couldn't come up. I was growing increasingly agitated. And Henry seemed infected by my mood, becoming equally urgent in his actions. No one knew what he was tinkering with. He remained out of sight for a long time, until this day. I woke from a nap and pushed open the door. Before me lay a sea of pink flowers, covering the living room and stretching from the second floor all the way down to the first. Henry was dressed in a perfectly tailored white haute couture tuxedo, looking extraordinarily handsome, with a bouquet of red roses in his hand. He seemed somewhat nervous, turning around to see me while rehearsing his lines. He even fumbled to hide the small ring box he was clutching in his palm. My eyes widened in shock, feeling an overwhelming surge of astonishment in my heart. As he walked toward me with a smile, I instinctively stepped back. Quickly waving my hands, I blurted out first, "No, no, no, don't do this." Henry's smile instantly froze on his face. His long leg hovered mid-step, neither advancing nor retreating. As if he hadn't anticipated being rejected so completely, so thoroughly, that not even an opportunity to speak was granted. A long silence followed. He asked me sincerely, "Don't you have even the slightest bit of affection for me?" I didn't know how to answer. I could only choose to remain silent. Henry's shadows crossed his brows as he casually tossed aside the bouquet in his hand and walked toward me. He lifted my chin, the mirth gone from his eyes. "Answer me." He insisted on an answer, reluctantly. I told him the truth. "I can't bring myself to like you, but it's not your fault. I've had someone I've loved for a very long time. Back then, we thought it was just ordinary. Neither of us realized during those days of constant companionship, what grew stronger than familial bonds was this profound love. But alas, it was too late. The thin veil of pretense hadn't even been pierced when the original family had already fallen apart. Henry was an exceptionally intelligent man. Or perhaps he had already guessed long ago. He let out a cold laugh, his tone both gentle and merciless. "Do you like him? Does he know? What if he never wakes up in this lifetime? Are you going to remain a widow for him forever?" My heart stung. I glared at him and shook off his hand. Just at that moment, Henry's phone suddenly rang. He clicked his tongue impatiently and pulled out his phone to glance at it. Then, his brows gradually furrowed. I noticed his hesitation and the sidelong glance he cast toward me. My body reacted faster than my mind for once, and I immediately snatched his phone from him. The screen showed an incoming call from the doctor. My heart gave a violent leap at that moment, like the tolling of an ancient bell that sent tremors through every limb. With trembling hands, I answered the call. "Congratulations. Just now, the patient has woken up. Hurry up, drive faster." Henry slammed on the brakes, stopping at the red light. His expression had been grim ever since I begged him desperately to take me out. Now he couldn't hold back his irritation any longer, asking me, "Do you have a death wish? Going even faster? Are you planning to swap places? Your brother just woke up, and now you want to be the one in the hospital bed?" I looked thoroughly chastened by his scolding, afraid he might turn the car around and change his mind, so while counting down the red light, I clasped my hands together and begged him with pleading eyes. Henry let out a heavy sigh, resting his forehead in his hand. He looked listless and didn't glance my way. Waiting for the green light to turn on, he silently picked up speed, overtaking cars one after another, finally arrived at the hospital. I couldn't wait any longer and sprinted all the way. "Brother," I burst through the familiar hospital room door, gasping heavily. I stood frozen in place, staring wide-eyed at the familiar figure sitting on the hospital bed. Tears suddenly surged uncontrollably. I could hardly restrain myself and was about to rush forward to give him a bear hug, when I heard John put down his soup spoon. He asked somewhat coldly, "And you are?" In an instant, my entire body froze. The smile and tears froze simultaneously on my face. The leg I had stepped toward him with now hesitated mid-motion. He looked exactly like Henry, whom I'd resolutely rejected not long ago. The doctor beside me explained, "The patient has been comatose too long. Some sequelae remain unresolved, which may cause temporary amnesia." Hearing that it was temporary, I slowly let out a sigh of relief. I wiped away my tears and continued to sit on the edge of the bed with a smile. My gaze traced the contours of his handsome, chiseled face with nostalgia, though the expression on that face was now cold and distant, bearing no trace of the doting indulgence and unconditional yielding it once held. "I still feel extraordinarily fortunate. I'm your sister, Teresa, your only sister." John's expression faltered slightly. I thought he had remembered my name, my eyes lighting up, but suddenly, I heard him ask with some confusion, "Are we not blood-related siblings?" I didn't expect him to be so perceptive, nor did I anticipate this question. Instinctively, I wanted to avoid answering and lowered my gaze to the small dining tray on the bed. Is this all you're eating? Isn't it too little? Should I go buy you more? John frowned slightly, displeased that I changed the subject. No need. You haven't answered me yet. I bit my lip. Under his unfamiliar, scrutinizing gaze, I gradually felt a long-lost sense of embarrassment. Henry, who had been leaning against the doorway watching, suddenly smiled, unable to mask his aggression. He said to John, "So you don't want a sister who isn't related by blood anymore, Teresa?" I feel he's too different from the John of before. Maybe he's already become a completely different person. Look, you'd better come home with me. John furrowed his brows even deeper, staring at Henry by the door. And who are you? He inexplicably disliked this strange man. Turning to the doctor, he said, "I need to rest. Please ask all unrelated people to leave." I lowered my head and quietly stood up, but then my wrist was abruptly seized. John relaxed his brow and comforted me gently. "Wasn't talking about you." Henry rolled his eyes and let out a cold snort. The ward door slammed shut behind him with a heavy thud. "I'm actually the daughter of your family's housekeeper." After a long silence, I lowered my head and stared at the ground. With great difficulty, I brought up my long-buried origins. "I've been spoiled for so long that I almost forgot. What kind of privileged young lady am I? The treasured pearl of the G family. I'm nothing but, just an ugly duckling John's affection made to shine. I'm 3 years younger than John. As for my mother, she started working for the G family right after graduating from university. The G family was kind enough to allow my mother to bring me along to work after I was born. That's why John and I grew up together, from the moment I was born. He treated me as his own sister. Later, my mother and John's parents passed away one after another, leaving only John and me to depend on each other. Everyone knew John had a beloved baby sister. Even with different surnames, few would doubt our connection. Everyone took me for the young miss of the G family, except for those who grew up with me, like Henry Luke. No one knew I was actually just a housekeeper's daughter, like a tiger playing the fox's game suddenly rolling over. The fox on its back fell flat, as if its true mask had been stripped away, before the cold, amnesiac John, humble and exposed, with nowhere to hide. But I kept my head down, uneasy with anxiety. John looked down at me pensively, his expression thoughtful. He still hadn't released his grip on my wrist. Lost in thought, his thumb unconsciously brushed lightly against my skin. Soon, he seemed to have figured it out. He nodded knowingly and said something astonishing. "So, you're actually my lover too?" "Right." I suddenly raised my head. My entire face uncontrollably turned burning red. I opened my mouth, wanting to pull my hand back, wanting to tell him no. Between us, until his car accident, we were simply very close siblings, nothing more. But John tightened his grip on my hand slightly, not letting me pull away. At the same time, he saw right through what I wanted to say. He tilted his head and retorted first, "Isn't it? Then why does my heart suddenly race the moment I see you?" In the past, these would have been the words I used to tease him. John said these words with a completely straight face. I couldn't tell whether he was being serious or just teasing me as a joke. My lips trembled slightly, unable to withstand even the slightest provocation. John watched intently as I blushed with embarrassment, unable to suppress the corners of his lips curling upward. He leaned back against the headboard, shoulders relaxed. It was a very comfortable posture. "Little sister. Did I used to call you that? Tell me everything that's happened in these 6 years. That day, I stayed in John's hospital room for a long time, talked until my mouth went dry, tried to take advantage of his amnesia to hide certain things, but he was too perceptive, those deep, calm eyes fixed on me unwaveringly, observing every subtle shift in my expression. Whenever I start preparing to conceal or deliberately omit something, he would be the first to gently squeeze my wrist and whisper that I'm being naughty, completely and utterly having me under his control. Several hours later, John, who had just recovered from a long illness, couldn't resist his drowsiness and fell asleep. I finally breathed a sigh of relief and seized the chance to slip away quietly. To my surprise, Henry was still waiting outside the door all this time. Seeing me come out, he first gave me a suspicious once-over with his scrutinizing gaze. Only after confirming my clothes were intact did a hint of a smile appear. "What's with that look? As if I'd do anything with a patient who just woke up from a 6-year coma in a hospital." Henry gave a hollow laugh and said, "Who knows, if we hadn't grown up together. Just seeing how clingy you two were 6 years ago, who would have thought you were siblings?" Henry was brimming with resentment, but fearing my anger, he kept his complaints to a minimum. All right, are you hungry? Let's grab something to eat outside before heading home." He took a few steps forward, then suddenly stopped, because I hadn't followed him. would finally manage to leave that villa behind. How could I possibly walk right back into that trap? Henry stopped laughing. He turned to look at me. His face expressionless, his voice remained gentle, yet carried a suppressed plea. Don't do this to me, Teresa. I couldn't give him the reaction he wanted. Some feelings are destined to go unrequited from the very beginning, whether it was him or Luke. The hospital corridor at night was eerily quiet. Especially on this floor, the surroundings were so quiet that the rustling of leaves in the wind and the occasional chirping of cicadas could be heard. I watched Henry's expression shift uncontrollably into something dark and violent, as if something terrible was struggling wildly within him. For a fleeting moment, even his fierce, sickly gaze made my heart race with the terrifying thought that he might try to forcibly take me away, imprison me in his villa, and lock me in that basement he loved so much. But in the end, he didn't. He deflated like a balloon, left with nothing but helpless resignation. With a pale smile, he said to me, "Promise me one thing, okay?" The look in his eyes was too pitiful. I hesitated inwardly, then gave a slight nod. I thought Henry would make some excessive demand, but he only said something utterly baffling. "No matter what happens in the future, you're not allowed to dislike me or even ignore me." With Luke's example before us, I no longer dare to trust him completely. I asked suspiciously, "Why do you say that? Have you also done something to betray me?" Henry just smiled. "I've always been the one getting tricked into revealing things. When it comes to things he doesn't want to talk about, I almost never get answers from him. Not only that, but he's started acting shameless too. Anyway, you nodded and agreed. If you go back on your word later, I might just lose my mind." With that, he turned and walked away decisively, as if afraid he might regret it. His retreating figure looked lonely and desolate, yet he never once looked back. It was truly strange. I couldn't make heads or tails of it for the moment, so I decided to put it out of my mind. The doctor wasn't lying about it being temporary amnesia after all. After a week, John had already regained most of his memories. After rehabilitation training, he could walk normally again and was ready to be discharged from the hospital. Tomorrow will be the last time Luke and I go to the civil affairs office together. Luke was very cooperative, so the whole process went extremely smoothly. After getting the divorce certificate, I happily waved it at John. He smiled and opened his arms to me. I immediately threw myself into his arms. "Mom," hearing that familiar, timid childish voice, I froze in John's embrace. Before the man who was once my elder brother and is now my lover, I found it somewhat difficult to face this child who had been forced into existence. John noticed my emotions. His large hand patted my head encouragingly. "Don't be afraid." Seeing I still didn't dare to turn around, John crouched down and wiped the tears from Ethan's eyes. He earnestly yet gently chose to tell the child the truth. "Your parents are divorced, but they still love you very much. Now your mother is going to leave with me. Do you want to come along?" Ethan fidgeted nervously with his fingers, instinctively turning to look at Luke behind him, but his father's eyes were vacant, staring blankly at my retreating figure. Ethan was only 5 years old. Though usually spoiled and disobedient, yet now faced with the scene of his parents divorcing and going their separate ways, he was still at a loss, not knowing what to do, and could only stand there dumbfounded, shedding tears. He said nothing. John could still sense his concerns. He coaxed gently, "Be good. No matter who you're with now, you'll still be able to see Mom and Dad in the future." John tugged at the hem of my skirt. "Baby." I immediately gave him a light kick in retaliation. Blushing as I scolded, "Don't call me that in front of the child." At least he turned around. I locked eyes with Ethan, who was whimpering with his head tilted up. My heart softened, and I bent down to pick him up. I pinched his nose and said resentfully, "Do you still want Shirley in the future?" Ethan immediately threw his arms around my neck, wailing, "No, I only want Mommy." John stood up, chuckling as he chided me for still being upset with the child. He patted Ethan's head, then quite naturally reached out to wrap his arm around my waist. From beginning to end, not a single person paid attention to the devastated Luke. We didn't return to our original home. John bought a small Western-style house again in the downtown area where every inch of land is worth its weight in gold. I looked at the 2 black cards in his hand, wondering where he got the money. John said mysteriously, "Got it from the person who hit me as compensation." I couldn't believe it. "I've seen that guy before. Where would he get that kind of money?" John mumbled vaguely. "There's always someone richer. TCH. Clearly, he didn't want to tell me. I crossed my arms and frowned, saying, "Are you going to tell me or not? If not, I'll get angry." John laughed and hugged me. "Will a kiss make it better?" "I'm being serious." John planted more and more kisses, his voice hoarse as he said, "So am I, baby." After a long separation, Even the slightest transgression could spark a fire. Gradually, no one spoke anymore. Amidst the sounds of sticky kisses, John could no longer hold back and swept me off my feet, carrying me straight to the bedroom. As we fell onto the bed together, both of us froze. Ethan groggily crawled out from under the covers, looking at us in confusion. "Mom, Uncle, what are you doing?" John's smile froze. In the end, he decided to address the immediate problem first, coaxing the child to go sleep in his own room. However, Ethan was in a bad mood. He plopped onto the bed, stiffening his neck defiantly, with a stubborn declaration. "No, I want to sleep with Mom tonight." John attempted to take forceful measures, but the cunning little brat immediately screamed and struggled, running wildly around the room, impossible to catch. Just like a misbehaving little beagle, I burst into laughter amidst John's expression of existential doubt and Ethan's increasingly energetic mischief. I just felt that life was becoming more and more promising.